you see that? What? Oh, hey. Hold on a second. I need to move back to my desk. I wonder if anybody actually thinks I moved back to my desk. What? Oh, hey. How's it going? I'm so glad you stopped by. I hope you enjoy the review. Even though this is like other Diablo ARPGs, they definitely made some tweaks and improvements. It has a finely tuned combat system, amazing graphics, and extensive class builds that are among the most impressive in the game to date. I have had a hard time finding fault in the gameplay. Even the grind has payoffs. Yeah, there are times the storyline drags, and of course there are going to be a few bugs. Through over 100 hours of playing time, I still find myself wanting to go back, even wanted to try different classes in another playthrough. It's hard to believe it has been 30 years since the first Diablo hit our computer screens. Even though there were a few stumbles along the way, namely some people didn't care too much for Diablo 3 and Diablo Immortals, Diablo fans are still willing to go back and try again in hopes that the game will learn from its past mistakes. With the endless amount of dungeon crawls where you must master your abilities in order to have a better chance of survival, enhances enjoyment whether you're playing alone or with friends. What seems like an endless number of dungeons that seem familiar at times, it just entices me to make me want to kill more hordes of enemies and complete objectives regardless of some of the occasional dragging of the storyline. Now this is not an innovation in the ARPG genre by any means. Blizzard mostly wants to play it safe by making small changes to the formula, with more focus on the skill tree and noticeable differences in the characters. This is somewhat good news because, like the saying, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. In today's gaming environment, it seems like developers think a complete change from one release in a series means innovation. I could understand this to a certain extent if a previous game had okay numbers in sales. It's just finding that sweet spot in keeping with the previous themes that made the game popular while adding more features that only enhance the game. Everybody has something about a game that makes them want to play it. Some people are more story-driven than others, while others are more about action. I personally want to play a game in which the story adds to the action aspect of the game in a way that I don't feel like I'm sitting there watching a movie. That's not to say that there is anything wrong with games that are primarily story-driven. Diablo 4 definitely kept its focus on action while enhancing the action with a storyline. One strong point is Diablo 4 looks and sounds amazing, regardless of what you think of the storyline. Being that Diablo is more action-driven, an emphasis was placed on graphics, in which I can't think of any time where I wasn't impressed with what I was seeing. Even during the cutscenes, I was impressed with the level of detail that went into the design. This is only enhanced with how much time went into the details of the sound. Great graphics and sound editing go hand in hand, and it's easy to put less emphasis on sound design while focusing on graphics. Now the story ending of the campaign felt very satisfying, but at the same time left me wanting more. Blizzard did a great job in accomplishing this because we knew there were going to be numerous expansions to come. One thing I really liked is how we were allowed to skip the campaign entirely for every character you make after the first time you complete it. Some other publishers don't go this route because it's just a lazy way to extend the game. Destiny. Sorry, got something in my throat. Anyway, I found each character to be fun and worth playing. From the crafting to the combat and looting, each character holds its own. Though, I'm more of a melee type player, so I tend to go that direction in the beginning. You can choose a sorcerer who deals damage in many ways from afar. Or you can choose the rogue, who is a combination of bow and melee attacks. The necromancer's combat techniques steal life souls, raises the dead, and utilizes the corpses of the dead enemies. Now the druids uses anamorphosis, which is the ability to use the natural surroundings. Now my favorite, the barbarian. It's a way of smashing a path through all the enemies. Each class has a mechanic that's unlocked during certain parts of the campaign. Each come with their own unique twist that adds to the gameplay. Now, there seems to be endless ways to manipulate your gear builds, and I like that. Of course, there's always going to be that grind that goes along with leveling up your gear and your character, but I didn't feel like it was a drag on this game. I didn't feel like my in-game currency was being plundered for a small increase in my stats. One good thing is, Blizzard seemed to take feedback from the players during the beta, which took away some of the unnecessary grinding of having to backtrack. This puts more emphasis on what lies ahead as opposed to having to go backwards, which is not as exciting. One noticeable drawback is the lack of distinct differences in some of the NPCs in which they look distinctively different, but their attack style was just to run at you in a horde-type mode. Though this is not the case with the majority of the enemies, from their attack modes to their defense modes. This gave me a sense of having to change up my playstyles according to what I may face. This also holds true with some of the bosses. With any new release, there's always going to be glitches in the online co-op portion of the game. Diablo 4 is no exception, but it's far from some of the other games that I've played. I'm sure you can think of a few. But it wasn't enough to ruin the fun. The enhanced ability to trade and the use of clans seem to have greatly increased compared to previous Diablo games, which is an added bonus. Fortunately, all your hard work is rewarded with some great in-game content. Once the campaign has been completed, there are bounties to accomplish for the Tree of Whispers. This is an endless spawn of quests in order to get more high-level loot. Also, playing at a harder difficulty will give you the opportunity to get the keys to the Nightmare Dungeons, which are more challenging dungeons you've previously played. At level 50, you will become ready to tackle the Capstone Dungeon, in which there's a way to unlock a third world tier. This grants you access to a variety of new activities and higher loot drops. Some of those are called the Helltide events, which is a different type of quest in which deadlier enemies swarm everywhere. Now, if you don't die, you can collect Aberrant Cinders. I think I'm saying that correctly, which allows you to open up special chests that are full of better loot. Now let's touch on the PvP part of the game. It is a great in-game aspect of the game. You will find 2 PvP zones in the Sanctuary, where you compete to slay NPC enemies to collect materials, while having to deal with rival players who might decide to kill you and take your loot. Running around in these areas is challenging and frustrating at the same time, since a party member in your group can betray you and steal your items from you. This is definitely not for a thin-skinned person. Then at level 70, you get another Capstone Dungeon to unlock, the Final World tier. This gives you access to even better loot, tougher enemies, and even more XP. There is also a final in-game dungeon designed for level 100 characters that adds additional things to conquer. The whole time you are working toward max level 100, you're earning Paragon points to make your character more effective. Eventually, there is a cap on both leveling and earning additional Paragon points that forces you to make meaningful choices with the limited upgrades your Paragon board can contain. I prefer this over the Diablo 3 characters leveling. The retail version of Diablo 4 will include a digital store where a player can spend real-world money on cosmetic items for the in-game character, with a battle pass with both free and paid tiers of rewards. Now, Blizzard has stated the online store will only contain items that are purely cosmetic with no pay-to-win mechanics, though there's no telling how this will evolve over time. Is that it's built upon a live service that will allow the world and activities to evolve over time. It remains to be seen how this will be updated, with content frequently enough to keep people engaged. If they keep with the same theme, I can only imagine how great it will be when new content is added to Diablo 4. This will only make things more enticing when done right. Hopefully, Blizzard keeps the train on the tracks and doesn't exploit the fanbase down the road. I am just hoping they will address and fix some of the bugs before they move on to other content in the game. Now, I definitely recommend Diablo 4 in its current state. Of course, things are going to improve. Again, its core gameplay is typical Diablo, and it's definitely not a story-driven game. It's definitely a step above Diablo 3. Now, I don't know what you would think about this, and I've read a lot of reviews online, but my rating for this game is an 8 out of 10. Now, I'd like to hear about what you thought about what I've said, and I thank you for stopping by. Take care.